Today's guest is super special, and I'm absolutely honored to have him come on the show. He is someone who I've looked up to in the field of biology and dog training, and has a background and passion of co-regulation as well. So this was super aligned, and I'm stoked to have him. And he studies the coevolution of humans and dogs and wolves, and has traveled the world, even learning from dingoes, free roaming dogs, sled dogs, you name it, and really has a passion for this co regulation process that I share with him, obviously. So I'm super stoked, and I hope that you guys enjoy this episode as much as I had enjoyed meeting with him. And it is recorded on Zoom, so the audio isn't the same as usual, but it still has just as good of juicy nuggets in it. So I hope you still listen. And he's recording from Italy. So I think it's only natural that you enjoy a nice cappuccino while you listen, because that's what I did. All right, enjoy. Hey, friends, and welcome to the Co-Regulated Canines podcast. I'm Ashley Cipoletti, your host, and I'm on a mission to create more connection. Dogs are really just the starting point. Together, we'll explore how to live with more harmony, ease, and healing so we can show up more as the best version of ourselves, not just for our dogs, but also for our community and our planet too. So grab a coffee and let's dive in. Hey everyone, I'm Ashley Cipoletti from Co-Regulated Canines, and today I have the honor of speaking with Marco Adda, researcher, anthrozoologist, dog behavior and well-being consultant, educator, and animal advocate. In addition to his work with animals, Marco has an extensive background in social work, body work, human development, and team building. Today we'll be diving into some fascinating topics, debunking myths about dog domestication, exploring how dogs and humans have co-evolved, and discussing how understanding coevolution and co-regulation can reshape the dog training industry. Let's get started. Hello.
Hello, Ashley.
Hi, so good to meet you.
Finally, we can make this.
I know,
Fantastic.
I
I've been
know.
waiting. We have been waiting for so long.
We have, I know. It's like finally a time worked up. It's hard with obviously the time difference. So I'm so glad that we made this work, and thank you so much.
Hey, you got some coffee? It's early morning
Yes,
there.
I do. I got
Thank
my
you.
coffee.
Okay, cheers. Coffee
Cheers.
party. We're in Italian mood here, yeah?
We
Yeah,
are.
good.
It's not
Good,
only
good, good.
natural. Would you mind just kind of sharing with our audience about your background and what drew you to studying dogs and human-dog relationships?
Here, thank you for having me here. And yes, where it all started. It started when I was a kid. Basically, when I was living in the suburb of Naples, Napoli, Italy. And at that time, that area of Italy, we are talking about the 70s, the 80s, late 70s, 80s. That area of Italy was packed with, it's the case to say, packed with free-ranging dogs. There were many free-ranging dogs around, and so I was a very interested and curious kid, going spending time with the free-ranging dogs, and um, that time has impacted my life tremendously. And what I was doing with those dogs, by intuition, nobody told me that, but by intuition, I was not trying to play with them or doing anything specific. I got that feeling that just by spending time with them, sitting on the ground with them, or just observing them and staying present at that moment, it was so important. And in fact, they accepted me mostly. Their many dog groups were accepting me in their areas where maybe other people, other kids, or other adults cannot enter, because I had that inclination to stay calm and almost at the beginning asking permission to enter there calmly, breathing calmly, entering the area, waiting for them to stop barking, making a few steps more, and then sitting on the ground, on the grass, on the concrete, whatever was the surface, and and they were trusting me, and then I could spend more time among the dogs, and that has changed my life forever. And in those examples, you see already a lot of uh, self-regulation and co-regulation we were doing with those dogs, and probably I've learned a lot about self-regulation. Actually, I've certainly learned a lot about self-regulation by spending time with the free-ranging dogs at that time of my life, right? And then later I started to volunteer in some shelters or learning more about dogs. And then it came the time when adult age started to study animal behavior. I got passionate in studying some animal behavior, some ecology. And then later, another stage of life, I started to travel around the world and studying free-ranging dogs in other areas of the world. And then studying other canines like dingoes in Australia and wolves in the UK, and then uh, sleep dog in Quebec, Canada, and fringing dogs in East Europe or Mexico or whatever. And that provided a lot of inspiration, let's say, and also a lot of new insight on self-regulation and co-regulation with the dogs. How do they co-regulate each other? How do they regulate or dysregulate when they are with people or when they shift from, for example, a free-ranging lifestyle to a companion restrained lifestyle, and how the regulation, the self-regulation system there gets up a bit dysregulated or disappointed or out of balance. And so many other interesting started to move around globally and locally to talk about those elements, right? And also by being a dog trainer and behavior consultant, um, and then developing an academy online where there are programs on dogs and wolves. So that I would say that initial input that I received from the streets of Naples, it resonated and expanded through the whole process of my life, and I am so grateful to those free-ranging dogs from my childhood because they have really marked my life tremendously, right? Yeah.
Yeah. What an amazing experience. And to get to observe and just learn from dogs all over the world. I've just started dabbling my toes in that myself, and I find it so fascinating. And I can't help but like notice all of the dogs in any country I visit and how they behave, and if that's different than what I see as a dog trainer in the US, which of course it is when they're free ranging versus being pet dogs. So yeah, we have a lot of similar interests, and I love that you've had that experience, and I'm so excited to dive in. On that
Yeah.
topic too, I'm curious, are you currently working on any research projects? Are you kind of in between that, or are you focusing on other things right now?
Yes, there are various folders opened, but research projects may take time, years
Mhm.
sometimes to gather some data or to writing or to do some review of the literature. So there are a couple of papers that are coming out this year. One is going to be soon, actually, I believe by February, March, and another is going to be in October, November. And those papers are around um, the the zoosomatics, what I am named. So the interaction of human and animals and the mutual learning that can unfold with a specific attention to the somatic work, which is an important part of my research and work, and it also has to do with more in general, not with self-regulation and co-regulation, because as we will see in a moment, one of the important, some of the important tools that I also propose for self-regulation and therefore co-regulation are related to the somatic practice, to the somatic work. We will see later about breathing, maybe, and posture and body language and so forth, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait. And for our listeners that may not be familiar with kind of this line of work, would you mind just briefly explaining what you mean by somatic work, and then also maybe even diving into like what co-regulation means? I know my audience will know it, but for any new listeners.
Somatic work, we refer to, in broad term, all the work where the body and the movement represents the main gate of access to self-discovery, self-understanding, self-transformation, and the discovery, understanding, and transformation of the environment. And the environment means other people too. The environment means also other species too, and not just other plants and trees and so forth, and mountains and the city and all that is related to all all what we interact with directly or indirectly, consciously or unconsciously, is our environment, the environment we are immersed in, right? So that is made of many layers of reality and many layers of understanding. And so we use our body and the movement, or our body mind, it would be better to say, and the movement to explore and understand at a clearer level and a deeper level how do we function within this environment, right? And in our life, right? So with co-regulation, we are referring in general to the dynamic process by which two individuals, and it may be the case of two people, of two persons, but it may be the case of a dog and a human, for example, to influence each other from a physiological and emotional point of view, right? And so in order to achieve a certain degree of stability and balance. So, for example, in dog training, this concept suggests that the ability, for example, of a dog to regulate her or his emotions and behaviors to also regulate the emotional, physiological state and behavior of the caretaker, of the dog parent, and vice versa, of course, and most importantly, vice versa. So the ability, the possibility for a dog parent or a dog caretaker to self-regulate and therefore co-regulate with the dog or the dogs that they may have around, right? So basically, this relates to the ability to be empathic to each other, to self-balance and mutually balance with another individual, right? So to receive input from another individual to balance ourselves, or vice versa, to provide an input to others in order to help them to balance themselves, to help them to regulate, right? And so in this mutual, in this conversation of and mutual support, we are able to co-regulate, regulate together, help each other to regulate each other and finding an optimal balance that can support our I would say homeostasis, or anyway well-being, given a certain time, a certain condition, under certain circumstances, within a certain environment, right? In dog training, or in the canine world, or let's say in the dog-human interaction, rather than seeing the training as a one-way event where there is a transmission, a one-way transmission of commands or information that are imposed somehow or given to our companion dog. And indeed, I find this very inappropriate and really not useful at all in some cases. Co-regulation instead acknowledge the interdependent nature of communication and interdependent learning between the two species, in this case, dogs and humans, right? In human, the co-regulation, as most of our listeners know already, this is well documented in developmental psychology, in particular with the with the parent-infant bonding process, right? So the parent provide, and the mother first and foremost, and the parents more in general provide input to the child, so the child learn how to regulate herself or himself, and given a certain situation, and also learn how to self-regulate in other circumstances where a parent is no longer around while the kid goes to school, or while the kid is growing, right? So the input of co-regulation that we receive in the parent-infant bonding process is what helps us to navigate life and self-regulate it while we are navigating life, and possibly to help others to regulate also by our behavior, and therefore to co-regulate with others when we start to develop stronger relationship, the first boyfriend, the first girlfriend, and then later when we become adult and we need to learn again how to self-regulate and co-regulate while we transition into the various relationships that are part of our life, right? And so that comes to our relationship to our dogs too, right? So a dog come into our life, or one or more dogs come into our life, and then we need to use those tools, leverage those tools, or relearn those tools, because this co-regulation and with our dog is crucial to create a safe and a safe environment where both me and the dog are feeling safe and we can thrive together. Let's put it this way, right? So safety is a core principle of self and co-regulation, of regulation in general, right? So we are both feeling safe within a certain situation, right? So you may not, let's say, one individual in this relationship may not feel safe, and is expressing anxiety, nervousness, and stress, all of those things that are the reflection of not feeling safe, not feeling at ease to some extent, right? So the other individual in the relationship can be involved into that, and so it means that the second individual gets dysregulated by the input of the first individual. That there is a contagion, and indeed, all of this process of regulation, self-regulation, or dysregulation in some cases, is importantly based on the system, on the brain, the way we are wired, and the mirror neurons that are neurons, which are neurons in our brain that help us to understand and feel what others are doing and attune somehow with what others are doing and doing, right? So, long story short, we are wired to do that. Other species are wired to do that, although research is ongoing to clarify which other species are. We believe that anecdotally, for sure, that dogs are able of that, that have some sort of mirror neuron system that allow them to understand what we are doing and to feel what we are doing. But we are little by little clarifying that, right? And so again, just to conclude on this point, maybe I expanded a little bit.
No, I love it.
There's a fantastic questions. We can talk for hours on that. But anyway, so I was saying we can regulate ourselves when somebody is, for example, nervous. What we can do, for example, and that can be very, very well the case of a dog, for example. A dog is nervous, is anxious, or another person. What we can do in that case, we can try to calm ourselves, so that being calm, and we can break it down what does that mean later if we have time. But being calm, that may foster a similar response into the other person, into the other individual, into the dog, for example, and therefore the other dog, the other individual also calms a little bit, feels calmer. So we are sending a trust and safety signals to the other individual. So we are regulating ourselves, and in the moment that the other individual also calms down and regulates himself or herself, we are co-regulating. We have triggered that conversation, the regulation conversation, where we start to regulate each other. And that's a form of attunement, if you want, right? That's regulation in a form of attunement. But there are cases where, for example, we can find this attunement not happening. Like, for example, let's say I am nervous. I'm starting to do something in the. A dog caretaker is coming back from home, and bad day at work, and then the shop was closed, and then now I don't have that thing for dinner, and then somebody calls, and oh, this happened, and very typical case in the daily life of everybody, and then we are nervous, and then the dog also in that moment, who is waiting us at home, has a choice. She or he can either come to us, wagging the tail. We see that behavior, wagging the tail, so we feel calmer. Oh, my cute, yeah, it has been a bad day. Let's prepare dinner, and then it calms me directly, right? Or the other way around, we are so nervous that the dog doesn't even come to say hello. It goes straight away under the sofa, and it doesn't come out until she feels, or he feels that we are getting calmer. Or we can even call the dog, and the dog, that for some reason that we don't explain, but the dog explains very well, that even the dog doesn't come out of the sofa because the dog is perceiving that we are too nervous. And so the dog is doing an attempt to stay calm and to stay out of sight, to give us space, and possibly hoping that by staying calmly there, we also can calm. So it's not such a direct way to co-regulate, but it is a more indirect way to co-regulate. I would call these by compensation instead than by attunement, by direct attunement. But still, those are strategies that dogs know very well. And why do they know that? Because they have evolved with us for thousands of years, so they know how to handle that species that we call human, and they also may call human, or who knows how they call us, right? So, and then there is, let's say, a third way of which we may feature. We have said that already. That is when we are nervous, and the dog also become nervous because of us, and start destroying things around or expressing other stressful behavior, and then it's the case of dysregulation. So when two individuals influence each other negatively, let's say, at least partly for a moment, for some time, and then dysregulation takes place, right? But then, there is the moment, even after when dysregulation unfolds, there is a moment when one of the two starts saying, okay, why don't we stop a moment? Why don't we calm each other a moment? Even if, that's very common in a relationship, in love relationships, and in this type of interaction, right? When a partner with your partner, no, I say this. There are always those moments, and which are natural, and which are also conducive for organic and necessary. But there is, at some point, there is a silence. Very silent. We are here, there, nervous or disappointed, and then one of the two comes and say, "Okay, come on, let's let's make a infusion. Let's revise this. Can I give you a hug, or do you need a hug, or let's plan 2 days somewhere, little trip. Let's readjust these. Let's find a solution. And then the other one is, yeah, but no, I'm not sure, because these things always happen, but come on, so one insists a little bit. So in this conversation, that in trying to solve this conflict, then this regulation starts to change again and return towards self-regulation and therefore co-regulation, right? This continuous wave of adjustment from dysregulation and self-regulation, co-regulation, and then dysregulation. It's a wave um, which is, I would say, natural in every type of interaction. But of course, we need to keep the level of regulation higher and the level of dysregulation lower. There is no relationship where where dysregulation doesn't appear at all. There is always a bit of dysregulation. There are always those moments of dysregulations and disappointment and mutual influence also in the confusion, in the stress, and so forth, in the nervousness. But then we come back to a baseline where we are both calm and calm each other. And dogs are fantastic in doing that if we allow for them to do that. If we are open to observe that they have those skills, they are wonderful. And in fact, in many people, I mean, most of people report that dogs have changed their life, that they feel better. We know also clinically how just the presence of dogs is important from many points of view, for biological point of view, the heart rate, the cognition, the well-being of people improves dramatically when a dog is around, but not in all cases. In some cases, life becomes more stressful because there are circumstances and behaviors of dogs that we sometimes we don't understand, that sometimes we misinterpret. But most importantly, and to conclude a little bit on this, so I can take a break and leave you some space. Sorry for taking
No,
all of this.
you're fine.
Yeah. So, but most importantly, we need to remember that dogs are wonderful in, very sensitive, wonderful in understanding and detecting where we are emotionally speaking and adjusting to us consequently. And sometimes they can help us to rebalance and regulate and co-regulate eventually, or they can impacted by our stress. And that's also important when we talk about dog training or behavior assessment, behavior consultation, behavioral patterns, and so forth, because dogs are importantly impacted by our own behavior. And maybe we can dive into this in a moment, right?
hmm Yeah, it's so interesting even coming in as a dog trainer of how important it is to be kind of like in a grounded spot before entering that space with clients and their dogs. And especially if you're working with more like aggressive like cases or things like that. Yeah, I find if you're like coming in nervous or if you had a really off day, like those are the times I'm like, oh, it's a little harder as a dog trainer to come into that space already having like if
Mm,
you didn't sleep well or all those things that can lead up to you feeling dysregulated when you come in a space where you're kind of trying to help the dog and the owner feel regulated. But I've had some times where even going in that space, I actually feel more regulated from like a good day by the dog and the owner that I'm working with. So it's not just me putting it onto them. It really is this mutual process. I love how you explained that with the waves. And I find
yeah.
that too, especially with kind of dogs that show a little bit more of kind of aggressive behaviors of not wanting to push it. If the dog's making me feel unsafe, I'm like, I need to take a breath. Let's make myself feel safer right now. And the dog will feel safer. And then the owner feels safer. So it's such a mutual, yeah, process. And the more animals and people involved in a home environment, sometimes the more like input of dysregulation or regulation is coming in. So it's fascinating sometimes where I'm like, there's kids and dogs and cats and other dogs, and one dog's trying to
Yeah,
regulate and then another dog's interrupting it. And how does that play into these their behavior? So love this topic.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm sure that you also find yourself in those situations where you need to help people, dog caretakers, dog parents, dog caregivers, guardians, whatever the expression we use, um, to calm down, especially in those cases of dogs with dogs being a bit aggressive or nervous, or with the behavior that go towards separation anxiety or distraction, or compulsive chewing, or all of those things. Um, so that you find yourself needing to help the people, the parents, to calm themselves, to stay calmer in order to support the process that you are also going to do with the dog. Are you?
hmm Yeah, I feel like it's so important of that, of like, okay, helping the owner calm down. And sometimes if you're mirroring that for them, I feel like it helps a lot too, of like they see me interact with their dog, maybe doing the same behaviors that their dog does to them, and how I respond to it, being maybe a little bit calmer. It's like, okay, we can all kind of calm down when my dog does this. Doesn't mean it's the end of the world, or I have to step in and use these harsher methods. And I think traditional dog training has really kind of grasped more around like dysregulation, where it's like, oh my gosh, you have to like step in and be the boss. And if your dog does anything, like yell louder, be like even more kind of over the top to get the dog to like submit, was kind of what the process I think used to be like. And some people still might be doing that, but I feel like actually coming in and being calm and looking at your own self, and what are you contributing maybe to this experience, and really just looking at it with more curiosity than anything, I find to be really helpful, versus like, why aren't they doing this? Is it because of, and creating a story around it, which ties into sometimes a lot of that self-regulation work, and yeah, and all that. But we can move.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to say we can kind of
Yeah,
dive into like a little bit more of the domestication and coevolution piece. I think is so super interesting. And so I love like the work that you've been doing and how you're observing this in different cultures or areas and parts of the world. But I'm curious, like, what are some kind of common misconceptions about dog domestication? And like, how do you feel like those misconceptions maybe have shaped modern dogs, if that makes sense?
well, thank you for this interesting and endless. I mean, question that brings in an endless answer. But let's try to focus on some aspects. First and foremost, what is domestication, right? So most of people know that, but just let's set the what the focus is. So with domestication, we are referring to the process, let's say, through which a species gets closer and closer to humans, to a point where that species can coexist with humans. Let's put it this way, in very simple terms, right? Coexist with humans in two different degrees. Like, for example, dogs have been apparently the first species to have been domesticated, meaning that have approached the human and entered more and more the world, the realm of human life, and then eventually happen to live alongside human and to develop and evolve alongside humans, right? To the point that now they sleep in our bed,
Mhm.
right? So that's the degree where dogs got, right? But there are other animals also that after dogs have been domesticated, like goat, cows, ducks, chicken, and so forth, right? And they live with humans to a different degree. Although somebody may also have a chicken sleeping with them, that's maybe a bit more isolated case. Is not common as dogs sleeping in our homes, right? In our beds, in our homes, and so forth, right? So, but yeah, first observation, this idea of domestication, we need to clarify, acknowledge, let's say, disclaimer. It's an anthropocentric concept, right? So at the center of this concept is human. So domestication means what refers to other animals surrounding humans, other animals entering into the life of humans, and so human is at the center. So it's a bit anthropocentric concept, but we'll deal with that. We'll deal with that. So um, in contrary with the coevolution, not really in contrary. In addition, let's say, with coevolution, we are referring to the mutual influence that two species have on each other. And we are referring in particular to a strong, not just behavioral, but also biological change, physiological and biological change, right? Just to clarify this as a general idea, because it's a bit more complex than what we think, right? So let's take the case. I have maybe a webinar on that, and maybe we can mention that it's open access and where we speak more in detail about that. But just to say in general, let's say that we have a toad, a frog, right? And this frog is poisonous. So he's poisonous to a certain degree, right? So now there is a snake that feeds on this frog, so likes these frogs and get this frog as a good meal, right? It happens. That's nature, right? But now, because this frog is poisonous, this snake, through generation after generation, through the process of evolution, develops some enzymes or some sort of how you call this anti-poison response. Yeah, anti-poison response, so that it can feed on this frog, right? And so this is the beginning of first, let's say, first step in this story. You know, the snake is changing throughout evolution his physiology and his biology in order to be able to feed on this frog. In return, the frog with time develops a stronger poison to be left alone by the snake, right? And therefore, the snake, through time and evolution, develops a stronger anti-poison in order to feed on it. So nature nature allows for this continuous evolution and co-evolution, where those two species are adapting continuously in order to survive, to improve their fitness and survival rate, and being able, in this case, to prey or to escape from those circumstances, right? Yeah, so this is a clear case of coevolution. I mean, partly clear to the extent I've been able to explain it, but at least naturally speaking is clear, right? But now with dogs and humans, yeah, we can speak to some extent about coevolution because they have been influencing each other, or to some extent evolution in parallel. It would be better also to say, because they have shared their space for thousands of years, and they have learned from each other. They have learned the behavior. They have learned to understand each other. They have learned how to co-regulate or regulate. in the presence of the other species. They have learned the way they look at each other and the way they inform other individuals about how they use their eyes, how they use their breathe and their breathing and so forth, right? So we have evolved together with dogs for the, let's say, 10,000 in the last 10, 11,000, 9, 10, 11,000 years. There is no exact date because domestication of dogs starts in different moments, in different geographic areas, at different stages, right? Now, the point being that this process of domestication is not something that relates to the past. And here we come to one of the most important misunderstandings about domestication. We tend to believe, some may tend to believe, that it's something that happened 10,000 years ago. While in fact, domestication is happening now. It's still happening. We are still in the process of domestication. We are still in the process of mutual learning, mutual understanding, mutual, influence of dogs and humans. So that four-legged animal, non-human animal, other than human animal that our listeners are happening to have in their home, and the interaction that we are having with them is still part of the process of domestication, which brings to our attention another important point, that we have both the responsibility and the ability to influence that process. We can do something. We can participate into that process of domestication. We can do something to that. It's not something in the past and we have nothing to do with it. We can contribute to it by the way we behave, by the way we understand our dogs, by the way we understand dogs in general, canines in general, the way we interact with them, the way we co-regulate or self-regulate or dysregulate in their presence, right? So this is very important. This is one of the most important misunderstanding about domestication. Like, for example, let's make an example. We have been walking alongside dogs, and dogs have been walking alongside us for thousands of years. And walking alongside each other has been an important school, I would say, or learning process about co-regulation. It has been also an important learning process about hunting and mutual learning, mutual support in terms of hunting and chasing and food provision, right? But it has been also important process of self-regulation and reflection and and creating a calm environment, creating mutual safety, as we mentioned before, right? So while walking alongside each other throughout the millennia, we have created safety and safety for both species. Both those species have created safety for each other, right? And this is what we can do still nowadays, because we're still in the process of domestication. We can still go through that avenue, go through that process, walk on that avenue. If we are mindful, if we are aware that that's a state. That's what's a state, right? That's what it's happening in that moment. Are we going outside just to have a little walk because the dog has to do a little pee? Okay, that's sometimes the case. But when we go for a walk and we put ourselves in contact with ourselves, and we are connected to a certain degree with our dog, and vice versa, our dog is connected to a certain degree to us, we are on a process of self-regulation. We are on a process of impacting, contributing to the domestication curve, which is not related to the past, is started at some point in the past, but is still going on now and it will continue because if at some point the dogs take control of our homes, for example, and they will cook for us in 10 years from now, we maybe with the help of artificial intelligence, who knows?
Mm.
That's again a step where domestication is bringing us. Now, this is a bit fantasy scientific, but I wouldn't be surprised as we are now cooking for them in our home. Then maybe at some point, who knows what may happen. That's still part of the domestication process. But okay, without going too far in the future, in the upcoming future, because this is
Mhm.
quite close as a possibility. But yeah, we need to be aware of it, that uh, we are determining domestication. And that may bring a shift in the way we perceive what we are doing today with our dog, right? It brings responsibility and it brings awareness, and it put the entire relationship that we have with our dog under a different light, provided we want to go there, provided we want to get under that perspective. Otherwise, we can use other perspectives, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, I stop there. I'll leave you some space.
No, no, you're good. Well, I like that you brought up the technology piece too, because it's something I haven't thought about like consciously, but you see how if someone's like on their phone, walking their dog, how that's contributing to a disconnected walk potentially, with your dog. And then sometimes if we're just scrolling on our phones, our dogs are like, hey, like, hello, interact with me. And other times they just kind of adapt and chill and let that happen.
Mm,
So I'd be curious, we'll find out through time of how much technology impacts also that coevolution of humans and dogs, because it's impacting humans for sure, but also now these dogs that have evolved with us. And if technology is impacting us this much, it's kind of a cool concept to think
yeah.
about. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. It's very interesting. To some extent, we are tuned with our dogs.
mhm,
Let's say when until a certain point, or still nowadays, if we have a certain type of mindset and we approach the walking with dogs, or living with a dog, or even staying at home, we have a certain type of openness and attunement with them. It's like we can say in technological term, connected like we are on the same Wi-Fi line, right? So
mhm,
we are on the same frequency, right? But now with not just technology may be the case of a tablet, a phone when we go out, or all of the other implications that nowadays life has, uh, is making an interference in that type of connectedness, right? Paradoxically, and we need to consider that there is a lot to say on that. Maybe for other also conversations that we are going to have, or maybe. But this degree of um, um, sometimes, for the various reasons that may happen, this degree of disconnection that we have from our dogs, uh, often also based on false beliefs, on misunderstandings, on preconceptions, and instead then being based on based on our interaction with our dogs on feeling, on listening, on attuning, right? That certainly doesn't help and interferes in a certain way with domestication. We will see where this brings, right?
mhm. Yeah, and I think too, you touched upon a really important concept of just like that mutual learning, where it's not just top down of human teaching dog always. It's like, no, they're responding and also teaching you. And I have always loved that about work with animals, of the lessons each animal I've ever met in my life has taught me. And yeah, and I think that part of domestication or coevolution is really important, because it's not just, well, we took dogs and then we made them do things for us. It's like, no, actually, we helped each other. And in the beginning of time, we didn't have fences and all that stuff. So dogs had to want to be with us, which I don't think dogs
Yeah.
would want to be with us if we were just being really kind of authoritarian about everything. I think they'd be like, "Ooh, I'm gonna go over here." And it's, yeah,
Yeah.
what could we have learned from them of why would we want to live alongside wolves or dogs, of like, okay, they were also contributing something beneficial to us. So it's kind of this mutual learning and benefit, and it's still happening and shifting and evolving, and in different cultures too, because how dogs and humans live in the US and certain states is different than how they might live in South Africa in different areas, or in Italy. And it's like things just to think about, and how much these different processes are still happening all over the world. And I think that coevolution piece is going to look different in these different little pockets, as time.
Yeah.
Yeah, super cool.
Absolutely. And yeah, absolutely. And you know, when that reflects very well what you're saying, what we were also saying before, right? That there is this form of anthropocentrism where domestication itself comes with that defection somehow, in my opinion. This is a bit anthropocentric term. And again, that's reflected in the life of many, having the dog at home and believing that they, humans, is the center. And if human is the center, then the training to the dog is based on human giving information, providing commands, right? It's all the entire system and approach, it is based on those foundations, it gets in a direction that I don't believe is useful. It doesn't honor dogs as a species, and it also denies the reality. It denies the fact that through evolution and through coevolution, we have learned tremendously from dogs, not dogs from us, at least not just in that direction, right?
Mm-hmm.
We, in both directions, we have learned tremendously from dogs, and not just from dogs, from every other animal, every other non-human animals. All what we do and learn and know in our life, personal, collectively, technologically, all what we are today is based as its foundations on what we have learned from other animals. Everything, period. Everything.
Mm-hmm.
We have learned everything from other species. So we can deny that. We can deny that. We can say, oh no, we have done the train. We have created a train. A spider, does the spider have a train? Come on. The train has the shape of a beak of a bird, and we have observed the bird in order to study aerodynamics to create a train.
So cool.
But we have helicopters with the technology. Come on, helicopters is how you call this unstable aerodynamics, where the helicopters can fly vertically towards the floor and stay stable without moving in the air. And we have learned that from bees, from other insects, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
We have observed whatever we have in technology, whatever way we look at, whatever we know, whatever we have developed, our evolution is fully influenced by what we have learned from other species. So when it comes to dog, even this little four-legged animal on our sofa, who seems so innocent and so unaware of life, that's the demonstration of nature that we have brought into our life, and is the witness of a process that we have done alongside that species from which we have learned so much. Let's remember that. Let's
Mm-hmm.
not forget that. Not just not forget, but let's remember that. Let's be more and more aware of that, and let's honor that. How? By listening, by being open, and letting dogs, if in the case of dogs or other species where that's the case, letting dogs to lead us when that's possible,
Mm-hmm.
to teach us, to tell us what they want to tell, to express themselves, to recognize their individual personality, their characteristics, their behavior, instead then believing that things should be otherwise, right? And that puts ourselves as humans, collectively and individually, in a way better place. We become more empathic, more open, and more teachable. And if we become more teachable, when we are more teachable, we can develop, learn, grow, transform, and advance.
Yeah, no, I think yeah, I agree with you on all fronts, and it's cool to think on that because I think hearing you say it, I'm like, oh yeah, of course we're learning from nature, and technology develops from nature, but I don't think I've ever consciously really thought about that of the shapes of how aerodynamics work and where that comes from, but it's so interesting, and I feel like kind of coming back to just a respect for nature is so important of like we have learned from nature, we are part of nature, we're not separate from it, and that's another passion of mine is like kind of understanding conservation and how we can kind of connect to other species in the planet and in that kind of big picture way, not just dogs. So I love that you also have, I think, a shared interest in that too. It sounds like we have a lot of shared interest in common that I'm super stoked about. So thank you. Is there any like
Thank you.
yeah, are there any like last takeaways or anything else that you want to leave our listeners with before we kind of share with them how to get more information from you and how to follow you along?
Well, I can suggest to everybody if they want to try whatever is the situation in their home with their dogs, with other family members, being those other family members non-human animals or human animals, to explore uh, uh, the somatic work if they're not familiar with. Very simply said, just focusing on some core aspects like breathing, taking some deep breathings during the day or at some point during the day, especially during the day, especially if your dog is getting nervous or some other people in the family are getting nervous or if you feel nervous. So try to sit, stay calm, and take some deep breathings, and you will see that that will calm you. So it will regulate you, help you to regulate, and it will calm those who possibly will calm those who you have around, and they will be thankful to you for that, right? Also, when you talk to dogs, if you interact with dogs, try to have a calm voice, try to have a low tone of voice. Yeah, if you want to excite things up, brings things up a little bit in the arousal and energy, you can squeak and scream a little bit and have fun. But if in the case of situations where we need to stay calmer, yeah, just use some a few breathings and a calm voice, and that will help other in the family to also calm down and also be aware of how you're using your body, how you're using your posture. If you are moving rapidly or if you are staying calmly and breathing calmly, the posture, the movements you do have an important impact also on those who have or those who you have around, on who you have around, and so dogs are continuously checking and at what are you doing and how are you breathing and how are you moving in order to assess a situation, as well as a kid would do. Like for example, let's say you have like okay, let's make the case a kid is running and then a 2 years old, 3 years old kid is running and then uh, and falls on the floor, right? And start crying and look at the mom and daddy to assess how serious is that fall, right? So, and if you approach the kid by saying, "Oh my God," the kid believes that that's a serious fall. But if you say that's okay, okay, keep working, keep playing, unless and if that's the case, if the kid is not injured, of course, uh, the kid will understand by your behavior, by you responding positively and calmly to that event, that that's not a big issue, right? So dogs are continuously making that check on us, the way we behave, And so they get directly or indirectly informed on the environment, not just by what they pick up from the environment, but by what they observe in us, right? So breathe deeply sometimes, stay calm, make yourself an infusion, uh, stay, use low tone of voice, body language calm, move slowly. And here is where the interaction with yourself and with your dog starts acquiring a neurosomatic relevance. So you have the power, so to say, to change everything within yourself and outside of yourself, including your dogs and other family members. So this is certainly a tip I would want to make sure to give everybody. And of course, um, we can discuss more on those aspects too.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing all that. And I love so much of the work that you're doing and the message that you're providing for the world. So thank you. It's been an honor to meet you and chat with you. And if anyone else is wanting to kind of get more of your work or attend one of your webinars, where can they find you? If you want to just kind of plug your social or your website, however way you prefer.
Sure, thank you. It has been a wonderful pleasure for me too. And those who are interested can find all possible information on marcoadda.com, so my main website. So you will find there information on consultation, the academy you will find there. You will find a podcast, publications if you're inclined to read, and also means to how to get in touch with me if you want to get in touch. If you have observations, notes, complaints on what I've said here, you can reach me out. I'm happy to receive also positive criticism and continue the conversation. And you can find me in all the main socials like Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, X, and so forth. So again, marcoadda.com, you'll find all information there. And again, thank you, Ashley. This has been a wonderful pleasure. My gratitude for having me here, for having been so patient to organize these, and I'm looking forward to the next one. And thank you also for your wonderful work, the wonderful work you're doing. I've explored also your work, and it's a pleasure to learn about your work, and for sure we will continue the conversation. Thank you so much.
Thanks for hanging out with me on the Co-Regulated Canines podcast. If you love this episode, it would mean the world to me if you subscribed, left a review, and shared with a friend. Your support helps more people and their dogs find a little more ease and connection in their lives. Want to dive deeper? Follow me on Instagram at Co-Regulated Canines. That's CO_regulated, the letter K, the number 9, S, or head to www.coregulatedcanines.com for more resources. Until next time, take care of yourself, take care of your pup, and keep building those connections.